Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Music Gallery at Home. This is the ultimate edition, the final one. What a fantastic trip it's been. 6 performances and 4 interviews in the series. And spoiler alert, the Music Gallery is not done yet for the season. We're going to be doing some stuff on our Facebook page in the months to come as well, and elsewhere as well. Before we really get going tonight, I would like to acknowledge the land on which the Music Gallery operates. It has been a site of human activity for 15,000 years plus. In the territory of the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe Nation, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. Territory is subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, which is an agreement between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and a confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. Today, the meeting place of Toronto is still home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island and around the world. As part of this community and as individuals, it's up to us to recognize our privileges in this space and to educate ourselves further along the way. I'd also like to thank our funders who've made this possible: Canada Council for the Arts, Ontario Arts Council, the Toronto Arts Council, SOCAN Foundation, Department of Canadian Heritage, and Ontario Creates. And our fabulous partner, the Canadian Music Centre, without whom this would never have happened. So great to be working with them once again, real comrades in arms here. And of course, our members who have contributed so much to, well, there have been a lot of messages, positive messages back and forth over the past few months, and really appreciate hearing from everybody, of course. Tonight, we've saved a really unusual and excellent edition of this for the final go at Even a Blind Squirrel Finds a Nut Once in a While, and it is Charles C. Smith, who I know mostly from work with SIPAMO, that's the Cultural Pluralism in the Arts Movement Ontario, which the Music Gallery has been involved with for about a year and a half at this point. And he's done just amazing work with his colleagues in terms of really getting down to important issues and changes in the landscape of arts and arts programming in Ontario and beyond. But he's also a playwright, a poet, and an essayist who's written and edited 14 books. He won second prize for his play Last Days for the Desperate from Black Theatre Canada, edited 3 collections of poetry, and his poetry has appeared in numerous journals and magazines, including Poetry Canada Review, Quill and Choir, Descant, Dandelion, Fiddlehead, and many others. He's the artistic director of the Wind in the Leaves Collective, and if you haven't seen the link to the dance work that he's doing based on Julius Eastman, I'll share that in the thread as things get going. Charles works with words, and it's going to be an amazing verbal response to Xuan's amazing piece. So glad we've got to see 6 different variations on this. So at this point, I'd like to hand it over to Charles C. Smith.
Journeying. A long orange crane hangs above a building. A long orange crane hangs above a building, like an open claw over gray wind blowing. Sunlight clouding evening stars. Sunlight clouding evening stars that guide a lost driver in a Volkswagen to a realm only now dispensed of suffering. To a realm only now dispensed of suffering. Music hovers in this air, a choir of chords in the sky resembles the last day of pain. The sky resembles the last day of pain. Paths of knowledge lit by ghosts of separation, those moments end up so surely in any life. Oh, yes, they do. Of whoever walks alone, bearing consequences of freedom. Of whoever walks alone, daring consequences of freedom. Like a lone trumpet's fat sound hovering over the ecstatic birth. Dinner at Frenchman's. And were you there? And were you there? The night Jelly bounced keys like a ball in his hands. And were you there? No doubt dinner was stingy. Beer, steak, and soft potatoes. Beer, steak, and soft potatoes because no one came to eat. That's right, no one came to eat. But to watch Jelly's fingers pick keys as he would his teeth with a toothpick. As he would his teeth with a toothpick. And then, oh, didn't you ramble? Oh, yeah, didn't you ramble? Out of New Orleans without the least tribute, without having left a quarter or more, like Bix for Bessie on a Chicago dance floor, like Bix for Bessie on a Chicago dance floor where her blues sprouted more tulips than a gunman's pistol. Bessie Smith, 1937 car crash, left arm severed near an emergency room that would not have her. The seat taking it all in the back of the car, a red pool by roadside. Anyone care for the photo credits? St. Joan is done with three black voices speaking at the same time. They are on stage, moving, speaking before the music starts. They are robed, hooded, walking in circles around images of Eastman from his performance, 8 Songs for a Mad King. The voices continue as the black spirit and the black beings move and grasp the look and contrast of Eastman's words. Line with black note heads, tempo MM144, each half staff ending in any octave high or low, in any octave high or low, cleverly ambiguous, save for virtuosity. Melodic frameworks, recurring fragmented descending F, E, D with D, 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 a half note and continuo figure, a bass pattern at 130, F, E, D with D, 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 a half note, F, E, D with D, 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 a bass pattern at 130, similarly optional. Whenever it appears at 1325, 180, 1230, a half note, a half note, a half note for 4 or 2 back note heads.
In this indecipherable blankness, full of even grief. Nobody wants it.
D minor scales into D, E, F, G, A, B, C, F in with 130, 240 without new pitches, 540 circle of fifths, of fifths, of fifths, no more, no more, no more, of fifths, of fifths, of fifths, no more, no more, no more, where it was all taking, talking, walking, evil, black, and queer, Stonewall and Attica, colleagues in the same bow tie and jeans. But what was missing in this thin space? Catapulted into voice without sound or season. No more, no more, no more. 540 circle of fifths, of fifths, of fifths.
We came to reveal to the systems of again and again out of ignorance into those rocks.
Lines with black note heads, tempo MM144, each half staff ending in any octave, high or low, cleverly ambiguous save for virtuosity. Melodic frameworks, recurring fragmented descending F-E-D with D-D-D, a half note, and continuo figure, a bass pattern at 130, semi-optional, whenever it appears at 1325, 180, 1230, a half note for 4 or 2 black note heads, opening motive evil nigger, treads in the dark cells this way with its limits, so many in the hills of folly, with a red satin cape, a mystic priest caught in the shallowness of despair. And in that descending evening of madness, you stood alone at the precipice, wind whipping you. You stood alone at the precipice, wind whipping you. A torrent of suffering, wild and unyielding. A torrent of suffering, wild and unyielding. A torrent of suffering, red scarf fluttering, black peaked cap, pearl black lapel, an essence of your deliberate ease, your mostly pyrrhic moments when your heart and veins, their shallow perforated vessels, their disturbing speed, plunged downward into a drain out of hell and its lesser places, the obscure challenging passages of silence, prayer, and grace you came to reveal, the studious pistons of your birth, as they hammered you again and again out of ignorance into the wet August wind, boomerang, blistering heat. D minor scales into D, E, F, G, A, B. C, F in with 130, 240 without new pitches. 540 circle of fifths, of fifths, of fifths. CF and ohm at 630, ohm to D minor continuing at 715, 830 marks the sequence, D flat and original key, the ohm and D minor only again and again, D minor scales into D, E, F, G, A, B, C, F in with 130 without new pitches, CF and ohm at 630, ohm to D minor.
So that we going to be you. D, G, D, D, F, G, A, B, C, F, 240, 540, circle fifths, Saint Margaret has Then falters.
Looking out of windows shaped by horror, cool bells ringing on hillsides. Looking out of windows shaped by horror, cool bells ringing on hillsides, where the earth revolves like a brushstroke through the black and starlit galaxy, a painting by an idiot savant blessed with a horoscope of the damned. Looking out of windows shaped by horror, youthful wings beat in this blue air, and you arrive at this cold hotel bar with a hypnotic fantasy, full of nightly fears and steady admonitions of the cold, unmarked journey of the bereaved. Gale force winds howl like murder in these waters, and the surf beat around dry shells of abandoned crabs. Prominent melodic recurrence. Every 90 seconds, shifts descending, F, E, D, and then D, 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 D in half notes, and then the continual figure at 130. Prominent melodic recurrence. Every 90 seconds, shifts descending, F, E, D, and then D, 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 D in half notes, in half notes, in half notes, in half notes, and then the continual figure at 130. Discretion. In the pain of light, the discourse as contemptuous as a cloud. In the indigo of a unique expression, the challenge against all that you say you want to be and are. In the paltry moments that insinuate themselves, in the rusted red agonies hanging like dried reeds, in the aftermath of seconds rattled off as if in the blue torpor of a whale's snout, exploding wisps and vapor, in the entrails stretched across bland skies, at the height of a creeping forecast of disease, in peculiar moments clamoring like helmeted construction workers on a sunburnt afternoon, in the dizzying winds that flash like hope or sequins clinging to garments of fear, in the endless questions that dodge superstition and stand like a bad somersault, in cries that sound like wolves seeking affirmation, the incessant chatter of glittering fireflies and distorted movements seeking reprieve. the endless question. Free. Visions of the scene. Burrowing darkness, stoic figures, red robes lurking in diluted light. Red robes lurking in diluted light. Sudden angels, wrapped in absurd and out-of-date ornaments, dangling on edges of air, dangling on edges of air, a silk permanent stuck in a web. Divinity, trumpets and tongues like wings, they fly like wings, like wings. Their dull posture, pathetic voice, their dull posture, pathetic voice, their dull posture, and pathetic voice, I think I've said it once, enclosed against the ever forward bending trees, and their leaves shattering distance, their leaves shattering distance, impaled on a stone, on an altar, impaled on an altar, promising night. Recanting visions. Light between buildings burns the leaves and ivy that cling in precise patterns above curbside near a deserted park. Light between buildings burns the leaves and ivy that cling in precise patterns above curbside near a deserted park. You walk there, a notepad and pen full of hauntings you wanted out through telling whomever would listen what you knew you did not do on that day you spent suspect of death, which happened in a green cloud, twisted spitting waves, with your back turned to wind and surf and blinding afternoon sunlight spread across a beach where he slipped beneath cool waters quietly away. And in that moment, where he slipped beneath cool waters quietly away, you were carried alone in calm water, trembling in silence and absolute fear, trembling in silence and absolute fear, certain you were not seeing what there could only be to see. After being seduced to swim while at your back, a boy fluttered under the shade, silent waters conceal. Bookends. The beauty of the sky. New York in October, Nassau in May. Reds, oranges, yellows against an endless blue, dotted with seagull and cloud. The beauty of the sky. New York in October, Nassau in May. Reds, oranges, yellows against an endless blue, dotted with seagull and cloud. I fly in a small jet at the last moment. This flight into what I learned set off by a voice, long distance, caught on call display. Area code and message covering a seemingly impassable space with a polite stammered greeting, with a polite stammered greeting, with a polite stammered greeting foretells your demise. And so, dear mother, dear brother, we now have both, each gone before I was ready to say goodbye. Discretion. Discretion. In the pain of light. The discourse as contemptuous. In the indigo. The challenge against all that you want to be in awe. Those paltry moments. The aftermath of seconds rattled off as if in the blue torpor of a waste. And so between my given name and your reaction to it, what else could there be? You saw choked white waves, cloudless skies, where he ran on sand as you dove into the cross breeze. I recall the single black and white photo, a boy in a bright white nightshirt and a faint smile hung on the living room wall, quiet and lonely, quiet and holy. I recall the single black and white photo, a boy in a bright white nightshirt, a boy in a bright white nightshirt, and a faint smile hung on the living room wall, quiet and holy. One violated memory like an hallucinogen, the other was decorated in shadow. Both a brutality, fixing who we were to them for looking once and then again, and still not to see them, swallowed up by August heat and the rising waters of an empty beach. Years later, you added up knockouts in the corner of a ring, led protests, spoke revolution, bandaged paper to your thought and skin. Years later, years later, years later, you added up knockouts in the corner of a ring, led protests, spoke revolution. And I left that space of stubborn tongues and wrapped fists. I left that space of stubborn tongues and wrapped fists, of words crushed by hunger, bleeding into night, only to find again to leave behind that lost boy choked by seaweed and crab shells, sand dollars and sharp stones, and the songs of leaves and surrounding beachside trees plunged into grief. And for years, we wanted these worlds, the songs of leaves in surrounding beachside trees plunged into grief. These worlds, bones broken in memory. I want to thank you folks for tuning into this. I really want to thank the gallery for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to play in this way. I think it's only honorable to mention the musicians that you've heard. Nicole Mitchell, whom you're listening to now, her piece More Than I Can Say. Julius Eastman, his piece Prelude to St. Joan, the a cappella voice. Nana Vasconcelos and Voces. And then a group called Tiazik from Armenia on the piece that I was reading to as well, called Pain of Light. It all weaves into this way of looking at the randomness around us these days and how our lives seem to be so meshed and connected, whether we are aware of it or not. And thus, reading as I have with this music and this image work was to try to see how we get through this. Hopefully we do. Have a good evening, everyone. Thanks again.
And I'm live. Thank you so much, Charles, for an amazing recitation series of selections of your work, atmospheric music background, including many of my favorites as well. And thanks to all of you for joining us Fridays and Mondays at 7 o'clock for the Music Gallery at Home. It's been a real pleasure to put together. Thanks to Crystal for being the brilliant tech behind all this. Thanks to Sergio. Thanks to Matthew Fava from the Canadian Music Center. And once again, thanks for tuning in to all of you. We'll have an exciting announcement of upcoming programming for the next few months coming up before the end of the month. So keep your eyes peeled to the social media channels for the Music Gallery for that. Anyways, enjoy the rest of your Friday night, and we'll be seeing you soon. Take care.